Well, hello, my name's Louise Savage. Welcome to my channel, Louise Savage Muses, if you've not joined me before, and welcome back if you have, and thank you for rejoining me. It's Friday evening. I've had a week at work and I'm feeling quite tired, but I was musing today about books that I've read in the past, and I started thinking about a book that I came across many years ago. In fact, when I looked inside, I realised that I'd written my name in, and I always, I don't know whether you do this, but I always put the date when I read the book, and it says March 1993, so a very many years ago that I read this book. But it's a book that really lingered in my memory, and it's a book that was written by a French author. So it got me thinking about how much I enjoy reading translated fiction, because I think it just gives you a different spin on the sort of culture and society of other countries. And also, you know, I think different countries have different literary tastes as well. But I feel quite a novice in this area. I mean, my degree was in classics, so I've studied lots and lots of translations of ancient fiction and translated it myself. But in terms of sort of more recent writing, that really wouldn't be the case. And it was interesting when I was looking through my bookshelves, I didn't find that many translated works. I was quite surprised. I'm also I was wild. I was so cross because one of the books that I really loved reading was Les Liaisons Dangereuses, or Dangerous Liaisons, by Chodelos de la Closse, but I've obviously lent it to somebody. I can't find a copy of that anywhere. I don't know whether you are familiar with the film. It starred Michelle Pfeiffer and, oh crumbs, I can't remember the actor's name. John somebody Malkovich, and it must have come out in the early 90s, I think. And I remember being really blown away by this film, and rushed out to find a translation to read. And the novel's wonderful because it's written in letter form and diary form, and yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it. But anyway, that's by the by. I haven't got a copy of that to show you. So the novel that sort of started this ball rolling is called Jean de Florette, and this version that I've got from 1993 actually contains two books, the Jean de Florette in here and Manon des Sources. And again, I came across these because they were films, very successful films, and I wanted to know more, so I picked up the books and read them. And I think these stories are superb. Marcel Pagnol was born in the 1800s, around the time I think that film was developed as a thing, and he wrote screenplays for films, and in actual fact, quite unusually, I think, these novels were screenplays and films before they were novels. And then the films were remade, I don't know, late 80s, something like that, with Gerard Depardieu playing the lead role. And again, that's how I came across them. So they're fantastic because they're set in Provence, not far from Marseille, I think. They're reflecting life at the turn of the beginning of the 20th century. And the main character, Jean, is some sort of clerk, I think, in a tax office, and he is a townie, but he inherits some land and decides to make a go of it, which is quite a brave and idealistic decision. So he and his wife and his daughter start to farm this land, which does not go down well with the local village community, who are really unpleasant and unaccepting of Jean's right to the land. And so secretly, the locals, two farmers in particular, I can't remember their name, they're related to each other, But they actually divert or block the water source to Jean's piece of land. So there's drought, it becomes really difficult to grow things. Jean is a hunchback, and so, you know, things are physically difficult for him anyway, but he's forced to carry barrels of water to try and sustain the land. So there's this huge sort of story of betrayal and suspicion and ultimately revenge, because I don't want to give any spoilers away, but it doesn't go well for Jean, and his daughter Manon ends up having to avenge what happens to her father in the second of the two books. These books are exquisitely written. The prose is beautiful. The translation's beautiful, yeah, if you want to sort of be transported at this time of year to a very hot, arid place, but also to sort of learn about all the intrigues of this family, I think you'd really enjoy this. Next up is Cheri by Colette. This, again, two quite short novellas. So there's Cheri and the Last of Cheri. And Colette, again, she was born again at the end of the sort of 1870s, I think. And this novel, I think, was first published in about 1920. And it focuses on Parisian society, on the dark sort of underbelly of the very wealthy Parisians. And Cheri is a young, wealthy young man, and he strikes up an affair with Leïla, who is much, much, much older than he is. And this affair lasts for about 6 years. And she's a sort of very wealthy courtesan who realizes that, you know, her time is limited because she's aging. And there's a very strong maternal character, Cheri's mother. So you've kind of got this aging woman plus Cheri's mum, who is quite indomitable, and she encourages Cheri to accept a very advantageous marriage offer, which he does. But when he marries, neither he nor Leïla have realised just how much they depend on each other. They are in love. It's a very improbable relationship in many ways, and it's his marriage that exposes this. And Cheri is not a very likable character at all. He's a snob. He's spoiled. He's quite brattish. So it's not to say it's playful would trivialize it. There are comic elements to it, but it's very dark comedy. It explores love, and it explores the aging process, particularly obviously for women. But also it's against this backdrop of this quite sort of debauched, there's satin and pearls and whatever everywhere. So it's a kind of feast of a book as well. So yeah, really sumptuous, and again, somehow appropriate for this time of year. Next up is Lullaby by Leïla Slimani, and she's a Franco-Moroccan writer. I've read quite a few of her books. She's published some very successful popular novels. This novel, Lullaby, I think became successful by word of mouth, which always speaks volumes to me. And she's also written non-fiction. I read a book of hers. Crumbs, I can't remember the name. It's Friday. I'm tired. But that was really interesting, sort of exploring the lives of women, particularly, the issues of being female, and issues around sex and gender in Morocco, which I thoroughly found absolutely fascinating. And she used, female witness testimony as her sort of main, thread through the book. But Lullaby is a really sensational story. it's not for the faint-hearted, because it actually begins at the end of the story, as it were. It begins with the murder of 2 children by their nanny, very young children. One's a baby. It's brutal and grim. But what then happens is that the novel unpicks why the nanny got to the point where that happened. The nanny has been working for a very well-to-do couple. I think she's a lawyer and he's something to do with music. I can't quite remember. But she's like the perfect nanny. She's in her 40s. She's experienced. She soon becomes very much part of the family, and they become very dependent on her because she's so good at everything. Like, wouldn't you just have loved somebody to come and organise your children's parties for you and do it, eminently well? So she becomes very much part of the family, but actually the whole relationship starts to break down, and there are secrets and what have you. So I can't say too much about it because it's only a slim volume, and I don't want to give too much away, but there we go. Next up, I think this is a novel that many of you may well have come across before, but again, it's one of those novels that has stayed with me from the minute I finished it, and I read it years ago. Shadow of the Wind by Carlos Ruiz Xaphon. I think one of the successes of this novel is the atmosphere that it creates. So it's set in Barcelona. You kind of walk the streets. It's Second World War and post, and it's really dusty and it's shadowy, like it says, and there's lots of mist and murk. So the premise of the novel is that a man takes his son, can't remember the son's name, I want to say Daniel, and he takes his son anyway to a library, which is a library it's called the Cemetery of Forgotten Books, and the boy is allowed to choose. He's only about 9 years old, 10 years old, and he's allowed to choose one book, and he does, and the book is called The Shadow of the Wind, and it's by somebody called Julian Carax, I think, and the whole sort of novel unfolds around this novel that he's bought, because this guy Carax there's obviously some mystery surrounding him, and various people seem to be very interested in this book. As he grows older, you sort of progress through his life, and this, the book keeps drawing other people into the story. And again, it's because it's a mystery and it's a thriller and it's this, that and the other. I can't really say too much about it, but trust me, it's beautiful. I think one of the things that I love about it as well is the way that it's narrated. So it's told in the first person from the perspective of the young boy. And it's just, the voice is so realistic that I think it reads like truth. So it doesn't really read like fiction. You think that you're reading something that actually, really existed in fact. And I think that's a very hard thing to pull off. And I know this book has been consistently, really popular. And I wonder if that's one of the reasons why. And also it's lovely, isn't it, sometimes to be reading a really big, thick, chunky tome. You can see this has had quite a lot of wear from me. And finally, and this makes me think as well, because this is I'm Not Scared by Niccolo Ammaniti, and I think this was a book that Simon pushed my way at some point years ago, and I was blown away by it. I couldn't put it down because it's beautifully written. Again, it's very kind of dark. If you like sort of Ian Banks, that kind of thing, I think you'd really enjoy this. So it's the story of a young boy who, growing up in southern Italy somewhere, I think in a fictional village, and he's with this gang of other children, and they're having some sort of race to a barn or whatever, and he loses, and he's forced to pay a penalty, which ultimately results in him falling through the building and into this hole that becomes exposed. And by the time he does that, the other boys are gone, the other children are gone. And in this hole is a child. And at first he thinks that the child is dead, but the child is not dead. And so he really doesn't know what to do. He's only 9 years old. He goes back home. He keeps it secret. And he goes back a second time, and the child speaks to him and says something really sinister, like, I'm dead, I'm dead. And anyway, it transpires that this little boy has been kidnapped by the villagers, and the young lad's father is responsible for the plot. So it's a rite of passage novel. What will this child do to you know, he takes the moral high ground, and therefore has to act against his family. So the whole thing is really fascinating. As I say, it's incredibly dark, but it's so well written. The scenery, the setting has lingered with me for however long it is since I read it. And I've subsequently gone on to read at least 3 more of Ammaniti's novels, and not a single one has disappointed me. I've really, really enjoyed them. And they're all dark, they're all grim, but they are spellbinding, I think. Anyway, there we go. So it is Friday. I'm going to go and make myself a gin and tonic now, because I can, and I think my husband might be home soon. So anyway, take care, everybody. I hope you've had a lovely week. Hopefully I'll be chatting to you at some point again next week. We'll see. Take care. And again, you know, as always, I love your recommendations. So if anybody's got any particularly contemporary translated fiction, well, it doesn't really matter, actually. I don't know why I said that. Because contemporary fiction is in my consciousness a lot. It's quite nice to hear about things that have been written some time ago. So please, if you've got things to recommend, fire away. I'm always fascinated to know. Anyway, take care, folks. See you soon. Bye.